Okay, hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome everyone, of course, to the second journey in the University of War, Arc of War University, whatever the hell. So last time we got together, and we talked a little bit about how to be able to tell what the story is or what the role is of the commander that you're looking to gear out. We're going to continue because I realized I could have just kept rambling on about that thing for a very, very long time. So, so, so I had to stick a pin in it somewhere because this is the thing that I want to do every week. And once again, my one shout out for the evening, of course, is that if this is if unlocking the mysteries of the game is something that is important to you, or it's something that you feel like is a focus for you, I would say definitely let me know, and I will put you in touch with one of the interviewers at Seraphim if you're interested in coming to 880. But if not, feel free to have a seat in the class, as it were. Let's move this cat out of the way. Okay, so my one plug for the evening. Okay, at any rate, last time we talked about roles, determining what, or really determining what commanders like to do. And then we started to look at how to build out an attack comm. So I want to do a couple of things here tonight. I do want to, in order to round out that set, I do want to talk about, the shoe on the other foot. I want to talk about some defense comms. And, just going at a pretty high level, and then hopefully if people ask questions, of course, during the course of the live stream, please feel free to ask questions in text, and I will try and put a spot at the end to answer them, or if there's no questions, then, we'll go into another concept. Okay, get rid of that thing. Let's open up the game. Let's open up the game of war that we're here to learn about. Oh, come on, with the login. Oh. Alright, I should have just had this going. You know what, there was an update. I don't usually play this game on my iPad, but, whatever. I mean, during the week I usually use my phone. I have a Razer phone, and I like it very much. Okay. Anyway. Hope you're enjoying the event, but let's not pay attention to the event. Okay, so we looked at some attack comps. We looked at Golem, and I mean, Golem's an easy comp to kit out. And then we did look a little bit at Hoodoo, and I will say, had a correction from the community. I posted it in the previous. I posted it in the recording of the previous live stream. We had a correction that Hoodoo's Chain Blast does do crit damage. Which okay. I'm saying things in a weird order. It's not really conducive to any kind of forward motion. But I'll be honest with you guys. I was kind of taken aback by. I'm just going to queue up some defense comps. I was kind of taken aback. I mean, in a good way, by how large of a reception there was in the community to the last live stream. It was pretty awesome. So I definitely want to thank you guys. This is Rogers. I definitely want to thank you guys, for really, getting behind me on trying to do this thing and helping me out with it. We'll have to look at Reinhardt. Reinhardt is definitely a comm I want to look at, but I would not lump him in with regular defensive comms. So I've got Rogers out. I whipped out my Rogers. I whipped out my Elf. And that's probably going to be enough for us to take a look at. Right? I mean, wish I had Galileo to take out, actually. Galileo's a cool comp to look at. But, we can look at him a little bit later. Let's start with Rogers. I mean, Rogers is like the quintessential tank commander, right? I mean, how do we know this? Like, forget Tyrant Comet for the moment here. His tanking ability is defensive stance. And again, whenever you're trying to find out what story it is that your commander wants to tell, you got to look at the skills. So, defensive stance, 80% chance to trigger before next attack. The 80% trigger rate, by the way, is ginormous. So, I mean, 4 out of the 5 tiles are going to proc this. Until the activator's next attack, damage on all our troops will be reduced by 30%, can be overlaid. So, you know, everybody knows the story. If you get him to level 50 or above, then in 4 turns he goes completely immune, which is great. And 4 out of 5, in 5 tiles he's going to proc it 4 times. So basically, what Rogers needs to do is he needs to survive until he can proc this, until he can proc defensive stance 4 times, and you have to get it high enough that he goes completely immune in 4 times. His first skill, the lower trigger rate skill, the 20% skill, it seems like it doesn't really fit in with his tankiness, but just like the same thing how with attack comms, we're looking to cross stats off of our list that we need to like start putting on gear. So the same way we are looking for skills that will enable us so that we don't have to, if we could cross a stat, even a single stat off the list, the amount of focus that it gives your commander is huge. And in fact, I will say that a lot of the commanders that we say aren't part of the meta, or a lot of the commanders that we say like they stink, or or they're not good commanders, the reason that we say it, by and large, is that they don't have the capability with their skills to knock out needing a stat. And what that does is it causes you to need to split your focus, because of course you remember that attack comms need 3 stats, right? They need attack, they need crit damage, and they need accuracy. With defensive comms or tank comms, you also need 3 stats. You need defense, you need HP, and you need either accuracy, or again you need sure hit skills to cancel out accuracy. What is the reason for that? The reason for that is it's the purpose of a tank commander not to just sit there and be a giant like boulder in the middle of the road, in the middle of the hyper road. The purpose of a tank is to maintain the integrity of their slots long enough to kill their enemy. So because of that, they need accuracy. They need some accuracy. The HP and defense is great, but without some accuracy, it becomes very, very difficult for them to actually seal the deal in a fight. So let's hold on. For copyright reasons, I need to. There we go. Okay. All right. So the same thing here. We know we're going to need HP. We know we're going to need some defense. The case as to like what do we focus on, that's still up in the air. But the fact that Tyrant comes along and it is a sure hit skill, even though it's not a great, it's not a wonderful sure hit skill, it packs a wallop. But the fact that he has a sure hit skill means that I don't need accuracy when I use him. When it comes to attack commanders, they will stack sure hit skills like one on top of the other, because they need to proc, they need to do damage before the enemy could do damage to them, generally. In the case of a tank, you don't necessarily need as many sure hit skills. When we get into gems, we'll look into this a little bit later, but you don't necessarily need to stack a ton of sure hit skills. The one is generally good enough for him to win, to do enough damage to win. So, because his defensive skill actually doesn't, it's great, it doesn't use HP, and it doesn't use defense. That means that as a Rogers is actually a very versatile tank comm, in that whatever changes come down the meta, as far as whether HP is favored or defense is favored, you could very easily switch up his gear, and you could have the proper stats that you need. Now we happen to be in a meta which is focused on bypassing defense. The reason that we're in that meta today is because of Vega, basically. Vega's breakdown stacks so much and ignore defense that he actually does bonus damage, whereas there's no single skill in the game that completely negates an HP buff. Because of that, even though players are using more ignore HP gems and commanders, however, because there's no single ignore HP debuff that debuffs 100% of the HP, we're still in an anti-defense meta. Therefore, when I start to look at some of these gear pieces now, I'm going to have in my mind that I am going to prioritize HP over defense. Having said that, I mean, look, I have seen people. You have options, and we will have to go into. I'll have to make a video which is more for like various options for each stat that you have. But you have multiple options here. I mean, you could look at Ghost Mask and say, like, oh, this is decent, look how much HP it adds. But the truth is, because it has that extra resistance weakened on there, it's actually not a ton of HP. I wouldn't really look at Ghost Mask. I've seen people look at, what is the air piece called? The freaking thing that I'm, like, tired of seeing. Hold on. Where is it? Devil's Touch. So I've seen people rock one of these, and yes, it does have more HP than a Ghost Mask. But to me, that's not the best tanky piece. To me, I mean, best in slot has got to be your Valkyrie. The great thing about the Valkyrie is you don't need an event for it. So what you can do is you could just keep crafting them until you get a good one. But the amount of HP bonus that it gives is very, very large. Like, you need this HP bonus, and you don't care about the -2 attack. And of course, best option for a tank is usually going to be the Eternal Barriers, which is the only weapon which gives both HP and defense. Does Wrath from does Wild Rose give a defensive stat? Strength and weaken. Okay, whatever. I mean, this is hands down. I've seen people when they run a defensive comm. I've seen tanks swap one of these out and go for a Titan, and honestly, it's either people that know exactly what they're doing and they're doing a lot of math on it, or it's because they don't have max research. Like, I'm talking advanced research. I'm just assuming that you have max basic research. But the people who rock a Titan and an EB, they do it well because they have a ton of research. In general, you're going to be going for either defensive stats or offensive stats. You don't want to split and have multi-focus. Where you can add in some attack with the Eternal Barriers is you could start to put some gems on there with attack, and that'll be great for you. Okay. So when it comes to your chest, it depends on the situation that you're using. Again, I would say this is going to be, it's going to be a huge source of stats for you, and you need defensive stats. But it's going to depend much more on what you're planning on fighting. If you want to look at textbook, obviously your Black Knight is going to be best for tier suppression, right? We know that. Creator is a great event piece that, it has great stats, but it is, unfortunately, it is geared more towards defense than HP. We generally look at that as a negative, but people were basically going Tyrant, because Tyrant has so much defense, and that's one of the reasons why the ignore defense meta was able to do so well. So, like, people were running Tyrants, and it just ended up, it all just ended up getting negated. So then they didn't have HP that was stackable. So what happened or HP that was HP that was one of the base stats. When it's one of the base stats, as you improve on it, then it gains additional percentages. The gems are never going to actually change. So then what happened is people came around with their Vegas, and people got, the Tyrant wasn't doing well for them. So then they started to go into the Creators, and Creator got a second wind. However, your best option is going to be Shadow. Because it's got HP, it's got defense, and it's got resistance weaken, which is great. I mean, if you're playing an air commander, then you have to look out for your one slot bust comms like Nico. You have to, and if you're playing a Walker commander in general, you have to look out for Vegas. So having that resistance weaken effect is, that's great. Another option for you, and this is relatively new, is the Shura. And I don't have one yet, so I will have to go into the handbook. Hold on. Here it is. Why am I... Cuirass? There it is. Oh, Cuirass? There it is. Okay. So this is crit wither, defense, and dodge, which again, look, those are defensive stats. I do not recommend this for 95% of people. In general, this isn't enough dodge, base dodge, to really matter for you. And dodge is a whole other game altogether. And dodge ain't what it used to be. What with just the huge amount of short hit skills that people are stacking through the gem sets, and they have it's when you go out into a fight in a very competitive fight. It's a given that they're going to have at least 3 gem sets. Maybe if you're on World, you could get away with 2. But what that means is that people have the capability to stack 2 short hit skills from gem sets. So it's 2 short hit skills more than they usually have. And if it's a comm that has a short hit skill also, then they have 3. It could get very, very difficult for them to miss, such that dodge is not something that I would use just as a matter of course. Dodge is something that I would have a specific setup, and in general, dodge commanders aren't necessarily sent out to win fights as they are sent out to do damage. And we could get to that a little bit later as we get into some formations and really unlocking the roles and what it means to be an attack comm versus what it means to be a defense comm. And so lastly on this, so it's got the defense again. We're not in an anti-defense meta. I mean, we are in an anti-defense meta, so this is not, the best thing in the world. And it's got crit wither. Crit wither, unless you're bringing 800 crit wither to the party, you're basically showing up empty-handed. The reason for that is awakening, and of course the fact that people could run a ton of crit. I've seen people have shown me builds. Shout out to Ned in Winter Soldiers. He showed me his build. He stacks a ton of crit. So I mean, he's looking for you with your 30% crit wither. That's nothing to him. Anyway, so the Shadow in general is a stronger chess piece. Let's take a look at feats, right? Feats, and then I'll take a look at. We'll see if we have any questions, and we can look at that. Great. So, look, I know people might look at Assault and go, "Oh, these are Assault is not a defensive set." I mean, this is something that you might want to try swapping in and swapping out, but honestly, you have great defensive options now. The best one, in my opinion, is Fearless. With Fearless, look, I mean, in general, look, here's the thing. It does not, total damage reduction does not stack with Roger's defensive stance. It provides a similar bonus to Roger's defensive stance, so it actually ends up applying multiplicatively. And because it applies multiplicatively and not additively, you get diminished returns. However, having said that, it features a large amount of HP, and the damage, all you want to do when you're a Rogers anyway, basically, is make it to your 3rd or 4th proc. So being able to stack that even though it's multiplicatively, the total damage reduction really does help you. And if this were not a Rogers, let's pretend it's not a Rogers for a second, then you would be in a situation, honestly, where this would be wonderful for you, and you might even look at other TDR headpieces, TDR pieces, which there's one that happens to be for the head. Besides Fearless, if you weren't going to go Fearless, Fabrication is good. The issue, of course, with Fabrication is that I think it's the same amount of HP, actually. Yeah, same. So the issue is, of course, that defense is not the best, right? Like, it's an anti-defense meta, but enough. It's not like the first when the anti-defense meta came out. If you had any extra defense, you were kind of like, you looked like an idiot. People would make fun of you. But nowadays, because people are stacking also anti-HP, having some extra defense isn't necessarily a bad thing. So that will be a decision that you will have to make, which is basically, do you run Fearless or Fabrication? In general, in my opinion, Fearless is going to provide more utility, I think, 3 out of 4 times. The one like tack onto this, because look, I'm not going to sit here. Look, head. This is Elf. Head is going to be the same. We know that. Let me look at her skills. I forget that, this isn't like me beaming information at heads. So, Blessing, before next action, until the activator's next turn, the activator will be a blessing. Will recover units. So again, that's not tied to a particular stat. That's just recovering units. So that means, look, the longer you can hang on, every single time you're gonna have a turn, you're gonna recover units, which is great. And then Curse, which is next time all enemy units attack, initiator units equal to 2.4% will die. This just kills units again, just like Bullet, just like Rock, Ghost Cannon, or Annihilator Ray. Damage dealt this way cannot exceed 200% of normal damage. This is just like the Plasma we were talking about last week, that because of this, it behooves you to stack some attack. So, in the vast majority of cases, when you're fighting, when the most competitive players in this game are fighting toe-to-toe, the way that they will do it is that they will stack as much defensive stats as possible, and they will get what attack they need from the gems, like I was talking about before, right? So they would stack, 3 and 4 gems on each eternal barrier, and I realize most people can't do that. So you will have to be able to moderate based on the fights that you get in. You have to watch your fights, guys. Watch your fights. See what is happening first. Are you doing enough damage and then peering out? Or is the enemy just melting through your stacks? And if you lose a stack, you lose the capability to heal units. So just like Rogers wants to hang on for 4 turns or 5 turns, really, a 5-turn cycle, Elf never wants to lose a stack. Rogers never wants to lose a stack. If the enemy is melting through your stacks, go more defensive. If the fights are just lasting turn after turn after turn, and you are able to hit the arc, then you could look at some more attack options. And again, you could stack gems to do that, or you could even look at stacking some attack gems on the head and other pieces of gear. So that's definitely something to look at. Let's take a look at. I think I saw some questions in the chat. I'm just going to take a look with that, and then I think next time we're probably going to talk about gems. Let's see. Okay, first question. This is by Warath BLTTLR/sys. He's like a computer directory. So, okay, first questions. Who do you think troop com-wise best suits the Shura? It just came... Oh, okay. Troop and commander-wise, I'm guessing that is. So, I think that troop-wise... Here, let's look at the stats. Because it's got defense, it's got and it's got dodge, and it's got crit wither. So I think that who this suits best is, I think it suits walkers the best. Excuse me. And I think that it pairs up very well with the natural whisper. I think that those two gear pieces together could actually start to form, a really great crit wither set. Who would I like to see it on? I'd like to see it on... I think that Medusa is going to become much, much more important in the meta. So I think that we're going to see Medusa, like, right now Medusa has kind of like a utility role, and I think she's going to start to build out some more tanky roles. I think we're going to see some more tanks, and and really what sets your role is not the commander, it's the gear, and we'll get into that later. But at any rate, I think it's best for walkers, and I think that I would like to see this on Medusa with a natural whisper. And then we had some guild drop. Oh, yeah, Master Commander Creator is greater than Tyrant in the current meta. Dead stats-wise, Tyrant is better. Tyrant is just... Tyrant is... Theoretically, Tyrant is much better. It's just that in the current meta, we like to see a balance between HP and defense. Soren asks, do you have any gear suggestions for Chief? See, I've been debating changes to mine, but could use some suggestions if you have them. So, we did cover attack comms in the last vid, so, absolutely. And after this, I'm going to call it a night, and we'll see you guys next Thursday. I'm going to keep doing this thing on Thursdays. Let's see, where's Chief? Because I ate my Chief. So, Chief's greatest thing, and look, you could look at the thing, read Chief. Chief's greatest thing is that he hits stuff. He hits stuff, he crits, he might see a resurgence if crit wither grows more widely utilized, then comms like Chief will then, as a reactionary measure, start to see more popular usage. So in general, we call Chief is really an early game comm. Or at least up until now he has been, because he increases crit with Super Laser by 3% per level. And of course with Crit Wither, this is now finally relevant to get this at level 60. Beforehand it was not relevant to get it over level 34, right? And even that's too high. Like, you should have this thing at like level 25, then you're good. That's why we call him an early game comm. You don't have to level his skills very high. But at any rate, so he likes to crit. So already I'm thinking I want crit damage gear on him. I want attack gear. He has a sure hit skill. And because of that, and because of the extra sure hit, is Super Laser sure hit also? No. But because of, you're going to put some sure hit gems on, which we'll get into next time. So he doesn't need accuracy, which is great. So now I'm just going to look at stacking attack, and I'm going to look at stacking crit damage. So for attack, if you're, I'm not going to talk about, old T12 is a completely different meta, and now because new T12 are out, it's kind of a side meta and not main meta. At least, look, it's the same gear before those stuff and the new T12. Same gear as lower tiers. So, Devastation Helmet is great for him. He doesn't need accuracy, so he doesn't need an Eye of Abyss or anything like that. And he doesn't need a mini Death Star. Of course, you're going to go for Titans on the weapons. And then when you get to chest, look, I would put, Shura goes on a tank comm. For him, I would put a, I wouldn't even put a defender on him, honestly. I would put a shadow on him, or I would look at using Black Knight, depending on whatever the situation needs, or even a Tyrant is great on him. And then for your feats, Majuel, man. You gotta go Majuel on this one. I know that people are looking at Overlord and they think that is great, and we could talk about it. We talked about it a little bit beforehand, in the last episode. But when you get to a certain level, it's just not. it's not practical to stack so much attack without having some crit damage in there to round it out. Thanks, you guys, for joining me here tonight. Next week we'll get together. We'll start to look at some gems as always. Send me your questions. Reach out to me online. I call it Defender. Invincible was the thing that I meant for chest. I don't know what's wrong with me. But hey, if you got questions, send them to me online. Send them to me on Discord or put them in the comments below. I will try my best to cover them in a later video. And keep it reals.